Hey everyone, Duke here, and today we're talking about how to farm high stat armor in 2024. I figure this is the perfect video to start off 2024 with, as I get comments all the time with people struggling to get good stats on their armor, definitely struggling to get triple hundreds, even double hundred stats, and sometimes even single hundred stats. So there's a lot that I want to go over and just kind of lay out the groundwork and really give you some examples of how to get this armor. Now, I think the most important thing about farming high stat armor and getting good stats is understanding a few systems. The first of which is going to be our Ghost Shell and our Ghost Shell mods, the Armorer mods. These are going to guarantee that we get at least 10 in a specific stat of our choosing, and we're going to use this to our advantage. So I've broken this down a couple different times in other videos, but I want to go over it again here so that it's all in one video. But every armor piece you ever get is going to be broken down into approximately 50% of your stats in mobility, resilience, and recovery, these top three stats, and the other 50% of your stats in discipline, intellect, and strength. It's not going to be exactly 50%, but you're going to notice that most of the time you're going to be very close to split between half of your stats in those top three and half of your stats in the bottom three. Now what that means is you're usually going to want to pick one stat in each set of those three to be kind of the main stat that you want. For me in PvE, that's always going to be resilience in the top three, and probably discipline in the bottom three. Again, there's going to be some different builds and situations where you got to choose for yourself, but for me, I don't think you can really go wrong with resilience and discipline in any scenario. And then you can usually also choose a third stat in either of the three sides that you also want to try to get up high. For me, on Warlock especially, that's going to be recovery. That's going to be helpful in terms of survival and also towards our class ability cooldown. Do note that for Titans, resilience is great for them. It's lowering their barricades. And then for Hunters, Hunters have it a little bit more difficult as they are going to want mobility for their class ability. And you still also probably want some recovery. So you can kind of maybe try to split a little bit between mobility and recovery in those cases, or just pick one and go with it. So now going back to our ghost mods and how to take advantage of this is, again, in our example, we're picking resilience, recovery, and discipline. And since discipline is the only stat we really care about in the bottom three stats, we're going to actually want to focus discipline, as that's going to allow us to have recovery and resilience as a 2 out of 3 chance out of any armor piece that we get as a quote-unquote good stat, right? Because we want resilience, we want recovery, we want discipline, so we want to focus discipline, and then we're going to have, we're basically turning luck into our advantage. We're pushing RNG in our direction because we have 2 stats here that are going to be useful. And again, Hunters, technically, you can have all 3 stats be useful, so it's even better for you in that case, where you just want to get that high discipline roll. So as you can see, that's why we are using the Discipline Armorer mod. Again, if you have a different situation where you want to run 3 different stats than I'm talking about here, just take those same notes that we just talked about and use it to your advantage and figure out which Armorer mod you need to use to get your stats to your advantage. Now there's a number of ways in the game to get high stat armor, but we're going to go over the absolutely easiest way to do so, because this way we can do in any part of the game. No matter whatever part of the game you like to play, you're going to be able to use this strategy. And that's going to be through helm focusing. Now, obviously, we are in Season of the Wish right now, but what you want to do first is make sure you go to each of the 3 other seasonal tables, the War table and the Fish area and the Season of the Witch area and through the portal, and make sure you pick up each of the seasonal artifacts that are going to be there at the table. If you haven't already done that this season, make sure you do this ASAP. This is going to allow you to get engrams from each of those seasons on top of your Season of the Wish engrams that you're also going to be able to get. So make sure you go ahead and grab these before you start playing any activity. Again, if you haven't already done this season, this is a very beneficial thing to do. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you can farm these engrams doing any activity in the game, and you're going to be able to get them very quickly. And again, the benefit here is now you're going to be able to get multiple different types of engrams all at the same time while farming whatever activity that you would like. Now, the last thing you're going to need to do before you can start getting that high stat armor is make sure you unlock the high stat armor focusing for whatever season engrams you are trying to use, or all of them if you're trying to use all of the different engrams. It's always a very, very easy thing to do. It's one of the first things you're ever going to do in the season. If you're going back to old seasons, you 99% probably have already done it. If you're newer to the game, maybe you haven't already done it, but again, very simple. For this season, it's literally just get all the armor one time, and then you're going to be able to focus it into high stat armor. So there is technically one other thing you're going to want to do before you start focusing your legendary armor and your legendary engrams, and that's figuring out what exotic you want to run. Again, longer term, you're going to want probably multiple exotics for different builds, and then you're going to need different legendary armor for each build that's going to kind of fit the correct stats and all that, but that's going to be a little bit bigger picture. We're just trying to create one really solid build here, and that's how we're going to do this. We're going to pick an exotic, we're going to focus it, and this is something that I feel like has not been talked about nearly enough, and or just isn't like I just don't hear it talked about. I don't hear it like how insanely strong this is and how what a big quality of life update and just big buff this is to getting good exotics. That's through direct focusing. The only thing you need for this is you have to have gotten the exotic one time, and then you can pick the exact exotic that you want if you've gotten it at least once before. All you're going to then need is an engram, some glimmer, and ascendant shards. For the ascendant shards, you can run some GMs, you can run coil this season, even if you don't have any people to play with. You can either go through the match-made coil, or you can also just do solo coil if you don't want to have to deal with other players, or just don't want to deal with blueberries, or whatever that may be. Again, even if you maybe don't want to run those higher level activities, you can just get ascendant shards through Rahul by getting, upgrading your prisms into ascendant shards. If you get some prisms, there's lots of ways to get those. You'll be able to get a few shards to be able to focus a couple exotics pretty easily. As for the exotic engrams, again, those are also much easier to acquire than in seasons past. They've recently made your first 9 activities, whether it be Strike, Gambit, or Crucible, doesn't matter which, you're going to get an exotic for every 3. So at 3 activities, 6 activities, and 9 activities on every single character every single week, you can get a guaranteed exotic engram that you can bring here to Rahul and focus. So we're going to try to create an entire armor stat build from scratch. We're going to limit ourselves to 2 rolls for every single slot. So we're going to get 2 exotic rolls and then 2 engrams from the helm and try to put together the best build and the best stats we possibly can. Now, obviously, for you, if you're watching this, you're going to be able to do a lot more than just 2 engrams. I'm just saying that this is something you could probably do in a day very easily. So I'm trying to keep it as basic as possible and something you can make instantly and just show that it is possible, right? So we're going to get 2 Phoenix Protocols right here. We're going to start with Phoenix Protocol, and we're going to look at the 2 that we got. So honestly, neither of these are overly great, but I feel like we're going to be able to work with this one. It does have a high discipline roll. They're both high total stats. We didn't get very lucky in terms of the distributions, I would say. This one's kind of low discipline. It is over 10 and has at least mostly resilience and recovery. This one has just too much mobility, unfortunately, but does have good discipline. So I feel like we're going to be able to work with this. We'll put this on for now, and now we're going to go back to the helm and try to get some legendaries to fill in the rest of our armor slots. So now that we're back at the helm, we can go ahead and roll our other slots. As we saw earlier, we already picked our chest piece, so we're not going to need any rolls there. And all class items are going to be the same other than Artifice, which we'll talk about in a second, so we don't really need to get those either. So we're going to get 2 helmets, we're going to get 2 gloves, and we're going to get 2 boots, and we're going to see how that goes. So our helmets, first one is pretty solid, a little, not the highest total stats, but a very, very nice distribution. And this one's also got a pretty nice distribution. We're lower on resilience. We got the recovery instead of resilience, but very, very high discipline. So 2 good options there. We got gloves, again, very high resilience and discipline. We got mob instead of recovery, unfortunately, but definitely a very solid piece. This one's not so great, honestly, so we're definitely going to want to use those gloves. And for the boots, again, we got good recovery, decent recovery, and good discipline. Again, mobility, unfortunately. And again, we got some mobility. 68 total stats on this one, though. So our recov and discipline, very, very good. If that mobility was resilience instead, this would be like a absolutely top tier piece, but definitely should at least be workable. We're going to go ahead and choose this helmet for now and kind of work from there. Now, the thing that's going to be super helpful is using the D2 Armor Picker app, and this is going to make things so much easier for you once you start getting more armor and stuff. Basically, the way this works is you can choose different stats that you want to achieve, so let's kind of lower things down for a second, and let's just say you just really want to get 100 resilience and 100 discipline, right? And let's move that as well. And then you're also definitely going to want to specify your exotic of choice. Let's just say, I don't know, Rain of Fire. And this is going to give you every possible build here on the right that you can get with those 2 stats. Now, obviously, you're going to be able to, and depending on your armor and stuff, you're going to be able to potentially get even better stats than this. So you can kind of go further. It's like, let's say I want at least 60 recovery and at least 60 intellect, and then it'll start cutting down the builds for you, and you can kind of go from there. Again, so flexible. You're able to do all sorts of things. Again, we can do 100 recovery here, get our triple 100 build going. We have so many different options. This is going to be super helpful as you get more and more armor. It's really hard to actually do the math for yourself like in game and figure out all the things. Again, we're going to go back in a second and just try to do it ourselves because we only want to use those couple armor pieces that we just got. But once you have more armor, this is going to be the way you want to go. Now going back to the armor that we just focused, this is where we're going to want to start putting in our armor stat mods to really kind of round out our build. So we're going to want to try to get to 100 resilience first. That is my #1 priority. Again, going back to kind of the beginning of the video, in PvE I want to have 100 resilience at all times. So we're just going to put resilience mods until we get to 100 resilience. Now you will note that none of this armor is masterworked, and masterworking your armor is going to give you 2 stats in every single stat for all 5 pieces. So basically, all 5 of these pieces, if you add it all up, you'd be able to get another tier or 10 total stats in every single stat just by masterworking stuff. So that's going to be very helpful and very beneficial and definitely needed and required to get your build as strong as possible and to push into those best builds possible. And it also gives you the maximum of 10 energy, which is going to allow you to not only use your mods for stats, but also build into your other mods that you're going to want in your other slots to, again, extend your builds and make them even stronger. So we are at now over 100 resilience, and if we use our last slot here on the class item to put discipline in, we can see that we were able to get our double 100 build extremely easy with literally just 10 total engrams. No, that'd be 8 total engrams. We did 2 here, 4, 6, 8. We used 8 total engrams. We had 6 seasonal engrams, and we used 2 exotic engrams. 8 total engrams. We were able to get double 100 builds. Again, nothing is even masterworked or anything. Now, just to show the importance of masterworking your armor, I went ahead and masterworked all of these pieces. And as we can see, this gave us an extra tier in recovery, but it also puts us well over cap on both discipline and resilience. So we can then go back into our armor pieces and go ahead and switch a discipline mod to recovery, and then take one of our resilience mods and also switch that to recovery. This gets us a lot closer to triple 100, literally, again, 2 10s and a 7. That is very solid for 8 total engrams. Obviously, to get your, your perfected triple 100 builds, you're going to need to do a little bit more than just 8 engrams, but this is a very solid starting build. I think this is better than 90% of people that I run with on a daily basis, or 90% of people that are like worried about, oh, it just takes too long, or oh, it's so difficult to be able to get stats or get armor and that type of thing. I feel like it's just a knowledge issue, right? It's an issue of knowledge of what to do, and it's an issue of like the worry of it being extremely challenging and being extremely difficult. This shows that it's extremely easy. You can do it extremely quickly with very limited time and very limited resources. Again, you don't even have to necessarily masterwork everything. If you take away the masterworks, we saw what those stats were. Again, masterworking makes it even better. I would recommend, if you are newer to the game, or again more limited on resources, that you don't just masterwork like the first set you ever get. Try to get yourself a little bit more gear and a little bit better stats, and save those mats a little bit. Just again, it's gonna be a little bit harder for you to come by those if you're just starting out on the game, or maybe don't have as much time to play the game. So keep that in mind. But again, this is gonna work out super duper well. The very final note I want to make in this video is on Artifice Armor. Basically, Artifice Armor, if you don't already know, it contains an extra bonus like mod slot here that doesn't cost any energy, and you can pick any stat of your choice to add +3 stats to. Now, in most cases I've experienced, Artifice Armor rolls not very well, just in general. Like, if you already have good Artifice Armor, awesome, but like especially the current dungeon, Warlord's Rune, I feel like I've ran Master a decent amount of times now. I feel like I never get a piece that's like very good at all, honestly. Again, there could be some situations you maybe farm more, maybe it's just a low chance, but like I feel like Artifice Armor is pretty overrated as it is, and then especially overrated just because of how difficult it is to actually get the right stats. And again, as we saw here, you don't need that to get very solid stats. Now, the one thing I would recommend is going ahead and at least getting a class item Artifice piece, because this doesn't have any rolls. You just need one. You need one ever in the entire time of playing Destiny, and then you have it forever. It doesn't have any rolls on it, so it doesn't you don't have to like, oh, is this the right roll, etc. Like, it just gives you an extra +3 that you can put somewhere in your build. So that I would recommend, if you're able to get one class item on your character. That's just an extra +3 you can put anywhere. It's just instantly better than your normal class item. But outside of that, again, I wouldn't worry too much about Artifice Armor. If you want to be, if you have your really, really good regular build and you just want to put it a little over the top, or if you're trying to play like the most end game, like like honestly more for PvP, if you're really just like end game PvP player and want to have the absolute advantages to the T that you can possibly have, maybe then. But even for end game PvE stuff like GMs and master raids and master dungeons, like you don't need to be that exacted on stats. That extra like one tier is not going to make or break pretty much any situation. Again, if it's something you enjoy, if it's something you like, you want to absolutely min-max the world, go for it. Awesome. I love that. I love that mentality. But just, I don't want people to feel overwhelmed by, going for these things when, again, we've shown that you don't really absolutely need to. And that's all for today. I hope this video on armor focusing, and the complete walkthrough of kind of how to actually focus your armor and how it works was helpful. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.